Claymont, Delaware, a town where life seemed to linger languorously, a slow dance between the familiar and the forgotten. It was here that our protagonist, Simon Morrigan, had staked his claim. The mornings found him seated by the window of his humble abode, his fingers tracing the contours of a faded photograph, his eyes lost in a past that seemed both a lifetime away and startlingly close. His weary gaze would then drift to the remnants of his morning coffee, the dark liquid reflecting the weathered lines on his face, etching tales of a time lived in the underbelly of the world. A soft chime echoed in his home, shaking him from his solemn reverie. The old wooden door creaked open, revealing the mailman. A brief exchange, nods and murmurs. His fingers closed around a damp envelope. The sender's name caught his eye. A shiver ran down his spine, his heart rate quickening, anxiety rearing its familiar head. It was an orphanage he knew from his youth, a place that had once echoed with innocent laughter and sobs in the night. The words on the paper blurred as he allowed the past to surface, as poignant as the day it had been buried. He forced himself back to the present, focusing on the desperate plea etched in ink. Blackmail, threats, the orphanage. The days that followed found him navigating the labyrinth of the town, mingling with the folks, breathing in their stories, their lives. And at the center of it all was the Assemblage of Shadows, a name that echoed in hushed whispers, curdling the blood of even the stoutest hearts. Yet he pressed on, his determination outpacing the gnawing unease. As the sun bade farewell, painting the sky in shades of a dying day, he found himself before the old orphanage. It stood like a haunted relic, its walls weathered by time, windows peering out like hollow eyes, its once vibrant paint now flaked and faded. The wind whispered through the gnarled trees that surrounded it, their bare branches scratching against the old facade, a skeletal lullaby in the twilight. As he stepped into the orphanage, he felt a chill cut through him, not from the biting wind or the impending darkness, but from the heavy silence that hung in the air. It was as though the walls themselves held their breath, wary of revealing their secrets. He let his gaze sweep the room, letting the sight of the dilapidated building wash over him. His journey had only just begun. As the newborn sun bathed Claymont in its golden hue, Simon found himself within the labyrinthine halls of the abandoned orphanage. His footsteps echoed through the empty corridors, the soft crunch of scattered debris beneath his boots, a lone melody in the haunting silence. In his hands, he held the remnants of the past, faded records, brittle with age. He scrutinized each one, his brow furrowed, the pallid light from the window catching the worry lines etched deep in his face. He needed answers, but all he found were fragments of stories, lives forgotten, and secrets still shrouded in shadows. Drawn by an inexplicable pull, he ventured into the heart of the orphanage, the main hall. Once the hub of laughter and camaraderie, it now stood as a silent testament to the passage of time. The echoes of the children's innocent laughter were swallowed by an all-consuming silence, their dreams and nightmares merging into the cobweb corners of the room. His investigation led him to the townsfolk, reticent and weathered, carrying their secrets like a cloak around their hearts. He navigated through a sea of averted eyes and hushed voices. A knock at the local inn's door, a muttered greeting, a hesitant exchange over a shared bottle of whiskey. Years ago it was, the innkeeper murmured, his gaze locked on the amber liquid swirling in his glass. Odd things started happening. Disappearances, rumors of shadows. The Assemblage of Shadows, they called it. Didn't believe it then. Just old wives' tales, we thought. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. It hung in the air like a specter of the past, shrouding them in its spectral embrace. Simon knew he was on the precipice of something much larger, darker than he'd imagined. As the unsettling tales unfolded, he felt a chill run down his spine. His anxiety, a monster lurking in the shadows, raising its dreadful head. He knew he was descending deeper into the rabbit hole. The echoes in the halls had grown louder, the spectral voices demanding his attention, drawing him closer to the abyss. Beneath a veil of ominous gray clouds, Simon encountered an apparition from the past. She appeared as a specter, clad in a coat of faded memories and old age. Her frail figure a stark contrast against the backdrop of the decaying orphanage. The once vibrant nurse of the establishment, Marianne, was now a ghostly echo of her former self, her once vivacious eyes dulled by the horrors she had witnessed. Each exchange with her was a dance around the unspeakable. Words, carefully chosen, hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken secrets and lingering dread. Simon, patient as the moon tracing its arc across the night sky, coaxed her story into the open with a soft-spoken sincerity that belied his growing unease. "The rituals," she murmured, her trembling hands wringing the faded fabric of her dress, "were unthinkable. But the convergence, it's what they all lived for." Her gaze seemed to look past him, as if staring into the abyss of her haunted past, her voice barely above a whisper. It was their ultimate plan, to call forth their deity. Night fell, casting long, grotesque shadows across the town of Claymont. As the echoes of the day's revelations reverberated within his mind, he found himself standing before the grim silhouette of the orphanage once again. Each gust of wind seemed to carry a ghostly whisper. Each shadow seemed to hide unspeakable horrors. The dread that hung in the air was palpable, as if the very fabric of reality was pulsating in anticipation of the convergence. Retreating to the confines of his rented room, his hands shook as he sketched the faint outlines of a plan. The echoes of Marianne's haunting words seemed to merge with his growing sense of dread, yet an undercurrent of resolve pulsed beneath it all. The monstrous puzzle of the Assemblage of Shadows was taking form, revealing an abominable picture that gnawed at his sanity. But there was no turning back. The echoes in the halls were reaching a crescendo, their spectral whispers beckoning him further into the abyss. The stage was set. The unveiling was imminent. As the relentless wheel of time turned, Claymont found itself cloaked in an oppressive gloom. The sun, a distant memory, seemed to have abandoned the town to its dread-laden fate. At the heart of this desolate landscape, the orphanage stood like an open wound, a chilling testament to the unspeakable horrors that had unfolded within its walls. Now it served as the sacrificial altar for the assemblage's monstrous deity, a god of shadows and silence conceived in the minds of the deranged cult. With the fortitude of a man walking to the gallows, Simon ventured into the belly of the beast. The once familiar halls now breathed an alien air, each echo a distorted whisper of the terrible ceremony that was about to unfold. His heart hammered in his chest, a staccato rhythm that mirrored the ticking clock, inching ever closer to the convergence. As he delved deeper into the labyrinthine structure, he could almost taste the fear that had once gripped the orphans and the staff, a palpable presence that prickled at his senses, raising the hair on the back of his neck. Yet buried beneath the fear, there was a profound sadness, an orphaned echo of lost innocence that was now overshadowed by the cult's horrifying acts. His investigation led him to a hidden chamber, a room that bore the unmistakable mark of the assemblage. In its epicenter, a grotesque altar pulsated with an energy that twisted reality around it, creating a maelstrom of chilling whispers and ephemeral shadows. The very air throbbed with anticipation, resonating with an eerie hum that seemed to reverberate through his very being. He found himself caught in a tide of nauseating revelations, each one more grotesque than the last. The markings on the walls, a cacophony of nonsensical symbols and cryptic words, seemed to move and shift of their own volition, drawing him into their cosmic dance. Each passing moment brought him closer to the dreadful realization that his role in this drama was more than that of a silent observer. He was an unwitting participant, drawn into the assemblage's twisted plot, trapped in the eye of a storm that threatened to consume him and the entire town of Claymont. Retreating from the unholy sight, he found himself grappling with the enormity of his discoveries. He was no longer a bystander. He was a part of this cosmic horror. As the reality of his situation sank in, his anxiety reared its monstrous head, threatening to submerge him in its icy depths. but he couldn't afford to succumb now. Under the shroud of an ink-black night, the orphanage's silhouette grew monstrous against the moonless sky. Within its oppressive walls, a symphony of shadows and whispers wove an unsettling tapestry, heralding the dawning of the convergence. This was the moment the Assemblage of Shadows had been orchestrating, an unholy ritual that would tear the veil between dimensions and invite their dreadful deity into reality. Simon Morrigan, now a reluctant puppet in this cosmic play, stood at the precipice of oblivion, staring into the maw of insanity. Every nerve in his body screamed in protest, his anxiety clawing at the edges of his mind, threatening to engulf him in its icy embrace. But within him, a kernel of courage defied the encroaching darkness, fueled by the unbearable weight of the secrets he'd uncovered and the lives that were hanging in the balance. The hidden chamber throbbed with an unnatural energy, the air thick with anticipation. The pulsating altar glowed ominously, casting grotesque shadows that danced upon the walls, each distorted form a chilling testament to the impending horror. The room was alive with the whispers of forgotten incantations, their spectral echoes intertwining with the assemblage's dreadful hymn. In a dread-filled silence, broken only by the cult's murmured chant, Simon's gaze fell on a cipher, an ancient sigil etched onto the altar's surface. With trembling hands, he traced the pattern, each movement seeming to echo through the chamber, amplifying the charged atmosphere. Then a horrifying realization washed over him. This was not merely a ceremony of invocation, but of possession. The deity they worshipped was not to be contained, but set loose. The assemblage didn't aim to serve their god. They intended to become its harbingers, embodying the deity's will and power. Fighting the swell of terror, he focused on the cryptic symbols etched into the altar. His desperate attempt to disrupt the ritual was his only hope, a frantic dance on the razor's edge of sanity. Each symbol he altered, each line he distorted, felt like a defying scream into the abyss. Suddenly, an otherworldly roar echoed through the chamber, shaking its very foundation. The altered symbols on the altar blazed with an intense light, dispelling the room's menacing shadows. The chant of the assemblage broke into a cacophony of terrified cries as their ritual was disrupted, the anticipated convergence twisting into a cataclysm of unforeseen proportions. When the storm subsided, the chamber lay shrouded in an unsettling silence, the echoes of the ordeal fading into an eerie stillness. He found himself alone, the assemblage vanished, swallowed by their own failed ritual. The once menacing altar was now nothing more than charred stone, the terrifying symbols erased by the very power they had sought to harness. Simon Morrigan emerged from the ruins of the orphanage, a changed man. The dreadful knowledge he had gained and the cosmic horrors he had faced were now a part of him, interwoven with his personal traumas into a tapestry of fear and resilience. He left Claymont behind, but the echoes in the halls would forever resonate within him, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between reality and the horrifying unknown. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.